What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Salty Runback, here to be your weekly intake of North American Developmental League of Legends. We say it here a lot on this show, but we truly are in the home stretch of the spring split. The regular season for the Challengers League has concluded. Our playoff bracket is out, and for the NACL Qualifiers, we very well could know the 4 teams making it into the promotion tournament by the end of this week, which is super exciting. We are going to talk all about it and more. We have our annual or splitual bracket unveiling that we each did, and so we're super excited to take a look at that. My name is Grapes. I'm joined alongside Hawk. Hawk, how are you doing today?
Grapes, I'm doing fantastic because, like you said, we're getting there. I mean, this is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the weekend where we will see the single most teams get knocked out between the NACL and the NACL Qualifiers, the entire split, because it's 4 teams will get knocked out of the NACL, 4 teams knocked out of the Qualifiers. I don't think we'll have more than that.
It's 8.
I guess besides the
qualifier
Swiss, but Swiss doesn't count.
Yeah, it's 8 qualifier teams as well.
Oh, you're right.
Back-to-back elimination days.
Yeah. That's a lot of teams. That's a lot of teams getting knocked out. So it's going to be.
And the bigger thing is that this is the second tournament, so these teams that get eliminated
They're done.
for good.
Yeah.
Unless there's some really weird situations, which we'll eventually talk about. But
yeah.
And a lot of teams have their seasons.
I want to chime in too, because we don't have a headline about it. You talk about promotion, just so everyone knows. Basically, if you said promotion could be decided at the end of this weekend, if everything goes according to plan, we will know our promotion teams. It's when things don't go according to plan that shit hits the fan. Watch Tier 3 tonight if you want to keep track of that. We're not going to talk about it directly on this episode, but yeah, we might know unless shit hits the fan, and then it's going to be super entertaining to watch the chaos unfold.
Yeah, I'm partly rooting for that, but also I like some of our teams that are towards the top. So it's hard to tell, but we had some really exciting matchups in the qualifiers. 5 out of our 7 series went 3 games, so we'll be talking about that a little bit later. But for now, let's head on over to our headlines. We're going to start things off in the Challengers League, where we had, speaking of upsets, a very big series between Supernova and FlyQuest on the second to last day.
Casted by a very good play-by-play
regular
caster.
Season. That was another thing we forgot to announce. We were both on the NACL. That was pretty cool. So shout out to Rally Cry and all of them for making that happen. But I was on this game, and it was a crazy series. Supernova and FlyQuest went back and forth, and eventually it was Supernova who came out on top of it. That brought them firmly into 3rd place in the standings, while FlyQuest had to, make sure that they 2-0'd Mirage Alliance in order to secure first seed, which eventually did happen. But our question to you, Hawk, we don't have to talk about that series.
Yeah,
we talked about it enough last week.
Yeah.
Just don't blind pick Silas in this meta, guys.
Oh my dude, on the cast, I was trying not to flame it, but I'm like, RJS is done. Anyway, we're not going to get into it. Yeah, that was funny.
Here's our question about this series. Does Supernova's upset over FlyQuest say more about how good Supernova is, or about how maybe vulnerable our presumptive number 1 team in FlyQuest is?
Which this is just such an interesting question, because I honestly think the series simultaneously says a lot and not a lot. Honestly, I think it's similar to the Maryville FlyQuest series, in which it kind of confirmed what we'd known all along, of FlyQuest is not immortal, and I think we've known that actually for a while now. Pretty much ever since they dropped a game to Fear, there's been questions of that circulating, right? However, the fact remains, at this point, it's so clear that Supernova, Maryville, and FlyQuest are the 3 strongest teams, and that is why, to answer this question, I think it says more about Supernova. We had a couple of questions last week of if things really went wrong, Supernova could drop to 4th, right? So the fact that they not only didn't drop to 4th, which wasn't really expected, but they didn't drop to 4th, and they actually beat FlyQuest, I think is just okay, we very obviously have an overwhelmingly strong top 3 here in the Challengers League. So, yeah, I think it says for that reason much more about Supernova. And really, I think while, yes, FlyQuest, now they are confirmed not immortal, gods have bled, they've been, getting scraped up the entire tournament, and I think there's no cause for concern for this team based on this loss.
Yeah, it was a really competitive series.
It was a banger. It was incredibly entertaining.
Game 1 was pretty close, but I think FlyQuest ended up kind of running away with it after a while. Game 2 specifically was incredibly
had
close.
A nuclear series, by the way.
Oh yeah, the Viego was basically the biggest player on his team in game number 1.
Yeah.
Game number 2, he was instrumental in finding engages, and specifically Shochi on the Nico also had a great game. And in game number 3, he brought it to Kindred, and that
Yeah.
kind of just spelled doom and gloom. Also, Surdy picked Twisted Fate top lane, and it did not go super well, largely because of Kenvi actually, and that I think leads into my answer to this question, which is I think it says more about Supernova being legit because, as you
Yeah.
said, there were those questions about how serious we should be treating this team, and I think very obviously they were able to play well together. But again, it also kind of like re-emphasizes the fact that we have a very solid, I think, top 3,
Yeah.
and then after that, like the next 5 teams after that follow, probably a little bit of a drop off. But parity as a whole in the NACL is pretty high because I think at the end of the day, both FlyQuest and Maryville, despite only dropping 1 series, both had like 3 or 4 3-game series that they ended up winning. So there are teams that, like, I think combined half the league has either beaten Maryville or FlyQuest or at least taken a game off of them. And I think that's going to hold true, and that's going to mean a lot when we head into these playoffs, which are double elimination, which means that even if you mess up once, you have the opportunity to try again.
Yeah, they both had 5 losses, I believe. I think they were both 19-5. Someone can fact check me on that.
So that's 3 best of 3s that they won, and then
yeah.
one
So
loss.
4 teams took games off of them, and yeah, I like it's again like I don't think there's too much more to be said. I don't think there's cause for panic for FlyQuest. However, I don't think they can rest on their laurels. I think in particular there is inconsistency in their side lanes, which is actually to call all the way back to our episodes of Past Assault. This was something we sort of pointed to, where I think Surdy has actually had a pretty inconsistent split. He's been good. I don't think he's been great. I don't think he's been the best top laner in the league necessarily. And Sudjet and Chime have had growing pains, right? There has been games where Sudjet has gotten blasted. I casted one of them. But I think that FlyQuest is still just very good. And really, I think to wrap up this point, Supernova has just proven that this is a team that you do not want to fuck with going into the playoffs.
Yeah. On that Surdy note real quick, which we'll talk about a little bit more with the MVPs, I think he's played pretty well, but also we are holding him, I think, to a very high standard compared to like the Linsanity run he had on Evil Geniuses, where you're not going to play that insane the entire split. It's like a little bit of a mix of what we saw there, and then also maybe some of what we saw in
He's had some insane games, but also some turbo grief games, guys. Like that's just what it means to be a carry top laner, though, I will say. So
exactly. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later on, but congratulations to Supernova. They are now the 3 seed in the playoffs, and I'm excited to see them go on a bit of a run because I think that they've definitively locked themselves in that group of top 3.
Agree.
Let's move on to our next headline, which is unfortunately on the other end of the spectrum, where we have confirmed our second team in the NACL promotion tournament that'll be happening in a couple of weeks. Liddy Sports had the road in front of them. If they beat Team Liquid, they would make it in. They would have playoffs. They would be safe for another split.
After everything that had happened, by the way.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
could have just won the 1 series. Yep.
And it did not end up happening. That was their 6th series loss in a row. It was a pretty open and shut case of a 2-0. And they're now back in the promotion tournament alongside Mirage Alliance. It's the first time that we've had a situation where both the teams that promoted in are also the teams that are back in the promotion tournament. So maybe that means the league's getting a little bit more balanced. Who knows? Question for you, Hawk, as we try to set our expectations for what these teams are going to look like in that eventual tournament. Hypothetically, if we stuck Lit, the current 5-man roster that played in qualifiers in summer, back into the qualifiers right now, we slotted them in over like another team randomly. Would they win the NACL qualifier this tournament?
Nope. It sucks because I love this Lit team so much. But honestly, this to me speaks more. Wait, what?
My follow-up question. Do you say no because CCG is there, or are there other teams that you think they would lose to?
Other teams.
Okay. That was my check.
No, that's a good follow-up. I love this Lit team, and I think that there are great qualities to this Lit team. They're a power friendship team. I think most of their players are individually players that would be very good developmental pieces on Challengers League teams. However, I think this team would get skill checked in the same way that they have in the proper Challengers League by many of our qualifier teams. I look at Winthrop, like, for example, Kisno, a great player. I would love to see Kisno back in the NACL as a developmental piece on a team. I think this is a player with a lot of promise. Good luck against Trickster Sword, buddy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I look at Winthrop. I look at Blue Otter for the same reason. I just feel like Lit's players are too volatile in their level of play for me to definitively say they'd be better than the field. I think they can defend their spot in promotion. I think there's a chance. I don't think they're doomed unless they're mental boomed, which is another thing. But if they're not mental boomed, I do not think this team is doomed. However, they are just too volatile, and I think much more akin to like our top level of play in qualifiers than I would say like the NACL, which is why they're in promotion tournament.
Let's not forget, Lit Esports barely snuck into this promotion tournament last summer.
Yep.
They had a top 4 finish with Sajed instead of Rockboom in the first tournament. They had a top 8 performance in the second tournament with Rockboom in instead of Sajed with their full roster that we have. Do you want to know the interesting thing about this, Hawk? Do you know who Lit Esports lost to in both qualifier tournaments last season?
Is it Winthrop?
It was Winthrop University. They lost
and they lost to
and the round of 4 to them.
Different roster,
and
but
both rosters
lost to Maryville in both of the spring ones. They hate collegiate.
That's
dude.
true.
They hate collegiate.
I thought that particularly was an interesting comparison because, obviously Lit has the same roster and Winthrop has the same roster, and the question now is like which one has improved more. I could maybe even argue that Winthrop looks better than they did with the same group of 5 this split than
easily.
they did last split.
They're so much better in 2024 / the fall. Like whatever they did in between the end of 2023 summer and collegiate season 2024, like awakened this team.
Hey, it's an art of the stiff. I genuinely think like getting to talk to him, like the macro that they've been able to learn, things like that, very, very important.
Trickster has been eating junglers for breakfast, dude. Like, I don't even know. And Sword is like all of a sudden the best mid laner. It's crazy. It's crazy.
And it's maybe harder to track progress and growth for a team like Lit that like promoted into the NACL and kept the whole roster because obviously they're going to look worse. There's harder competition. I do think like Kisno's taken a step. I think Rockboom was very good in the summer and is kind of still very good. The other players, I think have stayed around the same. I would probably call them like kind of neutral in terms of how well they've looked compared to last split. And compared to Winthrop, CCG, even Blue Otter, who have some pieces from the NACL and also some pieces from Coachify, the team that made it in the finals over Lit, and the team that was this close to making it into promotion tournament over them. I think it's going to be a tough road. Not even talking about Mirage Alliance, because I think Mirage Alliance is probably pretty doomed just because of like how they ended the season. But I think it will be very competitive, and I think Lit would be right in the mix of that like top 6 that we have right now in the qualifiers. Where they could win. They also could drop out in top 8 if they get the wrong matchup.
I would completely agree with that. I think Lit would be in the same tier as our top 6, plus honestly maybe Polestar, like to add them to the mix as well. Like that would create a top 8, you know? That is really strong, and I think Lit could win the whole thing. But yeah, and I think part of Lit's problem, like I said, players like I think Kisno and Rockboom in particular are like NACL worthy pieces. Messages, Dragoon, like there's an argument for them as well that like if you were to put them on a different team with some different like a different smattering of veterans and rookies, like they could really shine, you know, and they could really develop. I just think Lit has too many problems like with that roster together as 5, other than the power of friendship. And part of the issue I have, I don't want to like throw shade, but I don't think Plux is an NACL caliber player, and I think that like for example, for as good as I think Rockboom is, Lynx Rovex, Mobility Chookies, even probably Instinct and Trevor probably run that bot lane. So yeah, it just gets tricky. I think Grapes were in agreement with this, that Lit, good team, competitive in quals, will be competitive in promotion, but not an obvious favorite.
The fact that out of those 6 teams that make it in, only 2 will be back in the league and 4 will be like losers, quote unquote, makes things very, very scary for Lit. But I'm excited because I think it's going to be a very competitive promotion tournament now, and I'm excited for that.
I think this will be the most competitive promotion tournament we've had so far.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to speak for the Challengers League teams, but at least for our qualifier teams, this feels like whatever 4 we send will be so stacked.
Let's move on to our next headline, which is everybody's favorite award, the MVP in the NACLs. We've just wrapped the regular season, or the most valuable prospect. This is a regular season award for the Challengers League that has been issued for the past 2 years, and it's given to the player who the broadcast thinks has the best chance of being very successful in the LCS in the next 2 years. There's been a ton of winners that have had a lot of success in the NACL or in the LCS after they've won this award. Most notably Dokla, Busio, and Masu, who all are on teams that have either won the LCS or are currently at the top of the standings. So my question to you, Hawk, right now is, out of these groupings of players that we have, I want you to pick a favorite for who's going to win MVP and somebody who you think could be a dark horse, somebody that maybe not a lot of people are talking about but could make a running for that award.
Yeah. And this is such an interesting one. MVP, who I believe the exact wording that they use is who will have the most wins in the LCS in 2 years, which is such an interesting thing.
Okay.
Grapes, there's one answer here in my head. There's like multiple people that you could say are MVP favorites, but I think if I were to pick one, it's a guy that has been in the top 5 of MVP voting for like the past 4 straight splits or something like that, or 3 straight splits, something ridiculous. Yuji, this is his split. Maryville has been elevated so obviously by his return. Like, guys, I'm sure Niles is a great shot caller. You cannot tell me that Maryville's success is all coming from Niles, though. You know what I mean? Like, Yuji coming back to this team. Oh, absolutely. Sorry, I'm not trying to discount Niles.
I think he's playing better this year than last split, but
I would agree.
I digress.
Sorry, yeah, I was not trying to discount Niles. I do think Niles has been playing pretty well, and he is a good shot caller. But this Maryville team has been so unbelievably elevated. This has been a season, like many in Academy, of junglers, and UG stands to me alone above the rest. I don't really actually see an argument for anybody else. I don't think any AD carries have stood above the rest. I don't think any top laners have stood above the rest. I think one support has stood above the rest, but that's Chime, and I don't really think he qualifies. And then there's Quad. So there you go. That's why I think it's UG.
Yeah. And Quad, in case you don't remember, and honestly, I didn't even know this like for a long time until like a couple of weeks ago.
I didn't know this until someone told me.
Quad was in the LCK last split. And so I think that makes
and apparently
it
was
not only
terrible.
Yeah. So like in terms of prospect, probably doesn't qualify. Although I would agree he's probably the best player in the league. If there was an most valuable player award, he'd probably be more in the running for that.
Yes.
But yeah, shout out to UG. I mean, with the roster that they have right now, he has come in and totally made this team look super good. I think you could argue for a good amount of players on Maryville, actually. Even like either one of the bot laners, I think Scary Jerry specifically, has taken a big jump. And if he takes another jump like that, he'll be right into the LCS, although, well, who knows how big of a jump that will end up being. But that's the Scary Jerry that we watched in NACLQ last spring as well.
Man. Dude, Jerry's been smurfing.
But I think the big thing that makes UG stand out a little bit more than in years past is that it's always been UG Spyrex kind of has to do it, whether it's on FlyQuest or Maryville. I feel like in years past, it might have been like kind of either 50-50 or maybe like Spyrex is like the guy and then UG's like the supporting piece. I feel like that kind of switched around a little bit this year where UG really stood out even more than Spyrex did. And I think Spyrex had a very solid split. But yeah, this is UG's year. He's a finalist basically every split that he's played. And I would call him a favorite right now unless you're counting somebody like Quad. I think Surdy, as we mentioned earlier, could also be somebody in the conversation just because of how his highs are really high, but I probably wouldn't be voting for him. My dark horse probably is one of the 80 carries because of the fact that all of them have been really good. There's been a lot of really solid 80 carry play, and I think there's a couple of options you could go. I'm going to shout out Array really quickly.
Yeah.
If you look at the stats, he's actually had low-key like a really good split on Supernova. Team fights really well, as always. Has kind of been on that border. Remember, he was a sub for Golden Guardians last year. And I think if he, went up to the LCS, he'd probably be not the worst player, or at least near, he'd be competitive, just like Meech and Masu were when they were brought up. So I would shout at him or Shochi if we're talking about Supernova as well, because I think he also had a really good split.
It's crazy to me how stacked Marksman is now in North America after I feel like in 2022, people were saying that there's no marksman in this region. And because my dark horses are also going to be marksman, I don't think it's Surdy. I'm sorry. Surdy had some really high highs, and he is undoubtedly still one of, if not the best top laner in challengers, but he just had too many lows to be an MVP for me, even though like I think the player is an LCS caliber player, right? So maybe honestly by that logic, maybe you could say that he's an MVP.
Dark horse.
Yeah.
Something like that.
But I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me when I still think it should be like a merit-based award in the sense of like play really well. Too many lows, however, his highs are really good, and Surdy's undoubtedly great. I'm also going with bot laners for my dark horse. You picked the Ray. I'm going to shout out the other two AD carries that I think have really impressed the split, Lens and Scary Jerry. Like I said, I don't think any of them have stood above the rest enough to be an MVP, more than likely. However, the three of them have been some of the best players on their teams. They have been generally much more consistent and better than the rest of the AD carries in the league. And I think these guys have very bright futures ahead of them. I have said about a year ago that I think Scary Jerry will play in the LCS one day. And last split, Scary Jerry made me nervous. This split, Scary Jerry played even better than I thought he would be capable of at this point in his career. Like, the turnaround has been unbelievable. And then for Lens, it's really just been a steady growth trajectory. So both these players, I think, deserve a nod.
Hey, my man made it to the Lens hype train finally. We were
I've always been there.
I'm just
okay. All right, hang on. I've always thought Lens is good,
team?
just not as good as you did, man.
Hey, now you're on board. I'm saying.
Okay,
all right.
We're
now
I was on the
on
the caboose before. All right, okay, I made it up to the locomotive.
We're both at the front. I think.
Okay,
I think Lens is really good.
All right.
Last shout out. I think Sajed is gonna follow the tradition of Masu and be the MVP next split. So
dude, it would not surprise me at all. Would not surprise me at all.
Yeah,
especially playing next to Chime. Chime has
another
been
split probably, but
yeah.
But yeah.
Chime has been by far the best support in the league. It's like unreal. So yeah.
Yeah. Let's head on to our next headline as we start to finally talk about the NACL qualifiers here. We had a lot of games go the distance, but at the end of the day, we have 4 group winners, and not super surprising when you look at where they were seated. You have in Group A, Winthrop University; in Group B, Blue Otter; in Group C, CCG Esports; and in Group D, Lotus with a 2-0 victory over Team Fish Taco. CCG also beating Ole Miss, which were a part of our top 6. Hawk, after this week of games, would you confidently say that the group winners, those 4 teams, are the best teams that we have in the qualifiers?
No. I'm going to keep this really short. No, I don't think these are the 4 best teams for 2 reasons. One, you said confidently. I'm not confident honestly about any of these teams. Blue Otter almost lost to Pulse, and honestly, I think there's an argument to say that Pulse actually played better than them in both of the first 2 games. But Samakin is just that guy. Like, the rest of Blue Otter got in backpack for Samakin that game, dude. Okay,
they deserve the loss for not banning Zoe.
I mean, I won't argue against that. Like, Samakin deserves that win. The rest of Blue Otter got in backpack for that game, and credit to them for rallying. And then Winthrop. Dude, this team's weird. They drop a lot of random games where I feel like they're kind of beating themselves too. I'm going to give a shout out to Ariandel for playing really well in that first game on the Aurelion Sol. The roam bottom to get himself like 3 kills basically won them the game. Pretty sick stuff. Good job, Ariandel. And then, yeah, CCG. And then, so I don't feel confident about most of these teams just because, like Ole Miss. And I think Ole Miss is probably better than Lotus. I think if Ole Miss were to play Lotus, which by the way they will, assuming they beat Wang's Revenge, I think Ole Miss will win that series. Ole Miss has this habit of no matter who they're playing, they look like shit, but they always like play. This team is so weird because their macro fundamentals are so garbage, but their team play fundamentals are so good, and they're able to play against like basically anyone as a result. And I know I'm flaming Ole Miss a little bit right now, but honestly, Colomer's probably watching this and being like, "Yep, sounds about right." So yeah, I don't know. This team's crazy. I do think Ole Miss is the 4th best team, and I think they will be our 4th team in promotion. So
yeah, I think CCG on paper, one of probably the strongest roster we have here in the qualifiers.
They're the best.
Ole Miss, in terms of individual players, probably the best. You could argue team play or whatever. Ole Miss was up in gold like in both of those games pretty heavily. Shogo, in a loss, played Kog'Maw in vain, and had double-digit kills in both games. And so they had a win condition. They tried to play around it, and I think in this meta, Ole Miss against most of the other teams would have cleaned that series up. Over Lotus, I would probably say so. And then it gets interesting if you're debating between Blue Otter and Winthrop. But that was one of the most competitive 2-0s that I've ever seen, and I've said that a lot. So I would say Ole Miss probably in that grouping of 4. Lotus maybe out. I mean, it's hard to say like they're out after the 2-0 Taco.
Yeah, it
Not
is
that
hard
the
to
Taco
say.
2-0 was super relevant or anything. I think the biggest thing is that we're still not sure.
Yeah.
Taco, I'm a little worried about because they look a little bit tilted, and I don't think that series where they had an AFK and a TR bug that resulted in Levitate being AFK for 10 minutes and Jito playing Karma top lane helped them at all in that way. So I'm honestly pretty nervous about how that team goes. But these are still the best teams, although you could make some arguments here and there.
I'm going to just continue being a Reluminate shill for the rest of this tournament because why not? Even though their series against BlackRock was not particularly exciting, I think it was fairly clean in games 2 and 3. Game 1, they actually kept close.
It was not clean in game 1.
Game 1 was not clean. They did not. Ecstasy needs to learn what Nocturne R does.
It was not clean for either team in that game.
Yeah, but here's what I'll say is that game should have been way more one-sided. Reluminate was out macroing BlackRock, but they lost every fight because no one knew what Nocturne Orianna did and how to play against it. It was so funny to watch that game. And honestly, it goes back to I think Reluminate is a really good macro team. Whoever's shot calling for that team knows what they're doing. Individually, they have some weaknesses, but yeah, I think that team will beat Team Fish Taco.
Wow. Okay, pretty bold prediction.
Yep.
It means that you definitely think they're not one of the 4 best teams in NACL
I do
qualifiers,
not think.
So.
I think Team Fish Taco, whatever happened to them this split, this team is incapable of promoting into the Challengers League. That is my.
They need
I don't
a
know
lot
what
of
it is,
things
man.
to go right. They need to win the whole tournament still, and even if they turn it around, it's hard to say that they could win the whole thing. So, yeah, I think the only argument is maybe Ole Miss in over Lotus, and hey, we'll find out at the end of this week if that ends up being true. By the way, real quick before we head on to our last headline, Winthrop and Blue Water just finally clinched their spot in the promotion tournament. You happy about that?
Yes, I am. These are the 2 teams I really wanted to see there. Hoping CCG and Ole Miss, I think at this point are my other 2. I would be perfectly okay with seeing Lotus there as well, by the way. I like that team a lot as well. If anyone else makes it, I mean, shout out to them for really pulling up for this tournament. But
I think the thing is, if any other team makes it, then we're gonna be happy because they look so good in that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
if any other team makes it, it's gonna be well, damn, good for them, you know?
Exactly.
But yeah, I'm very happy that Winthrop and Blue Otter won last week. Even though I was kind of rooting for Pulse a little bit.
They're fun.
Just for the upset.
If they make a run, I wouldn't be upset either. So
it was funny. I talked to Music, and Music's I don't really care that much that we're in promotion tournament. We're just playing for fun. And I'm like, you're so real for that.
Oh, man. Let's move on to our last headline here. Speaking of teams that might not have a good chance of making the promotion tournament, but we're still impressed by their play nonetheless. There's a lot of new pieces and players in the second tournament. A lot of them had some upsets in the lower bracket. You can think of Nigel's upsetting ISU, as well as, that crazy series between Reluminate and BlackRock Esports. Hawk, our final headline, who's been the best newcomer to this tournament specifically?
Which newcomer, by the way, we say it's not just rookies, right? It's just people that did not play in tournament 1. That opens it up a little bit more. I'm just gonna throw out some names. Shocky has come in and been actually really, really good. I don't think people really expected that. I'm people. I thought Shocky was a good, fine, but he's been actually very good. And in particular, apparently Meslo has been a pushover at this tournament, but he also took a turn on Lawrence's cheeks as well. And I was like, wow, okay, Shocky. And Hub, 80 carry for Nameless. That guy's pretty cool.
Only played 1 series, but have a chance. Gentle Hearts, we'll see.
Yeah. There's some shoutouts.
Yeah. Well, the ones you're missing are just all the new CCG players. I feel like those like kind of don't count.
Yeah,
because,
it's true. Yeah, Bradley.
like, if we just said,
Bradley's
like, oh,
the
yeah,
correct answer.
Bradley's been
to
great.
This.
Yeah, and then that's just the end of the headline.
Bradley's the correct answer to this question. Yukino, okay, but like you know,
yeah,
they're not
honestly,
who we're talking about.
I will say, Yukino slower to get into form than Bradley has been so far. He's had some funny games. But he clutched up against Ole Miss.
Yukino has been like Rainover or something, where he's God one game, and then looks like me on Riverhawk Talk the next game.
Newcomers that I think I want to shout out. I think Shimmer has played really well. I think that's a pretty obvious one, though.
Shimmer's been legit.
You mentioned like the shot calling. I think he's a big part of that. So I would give him a shout, even though he was in the like Swiss part of the last tournament. And then, Lunar and Just playing pretty well in Polestar as well. I know that we had our doubts about like how good they were going to be, how big an upgrade they were going to be. This Polestar team looks much better. You could attribute some of it to Shockey, you can attribute some of it to Lunar and Just. I think both of them have been working well, and this is suddenly a team that we continue to say are maybe on the verge of jumping into that top 6.
Yep. I would agree. One last shout out to give. You talked about Reluminate. Gonna be a Reluminate shill. First of all, Sushi also has been really good. Shout out Sushi for BlackRock. I think for like a debut tournament on a like lower tier team, I think it was perfectly reasonable. I think Sushi was one of the better ones on that team. I'm Reluminate. I think Shimmer's been very good, like you said. I think Shimmer has not even been the best player. I think their support Kafu is amazing. So that's a shout out as well. Also, Conveying had a great series against Papa had a great series against BlackRock, but he's not new. Kind of new.
There's some of our newcomers. Shout out to all of them. We're gonna see the CCG. We're probably gonna see the CCG guys a little bit more. But if any of them end up getting eliminated, the other ones, I'm sure we're gonna see them in more tournaments as we continue to go on the qualifier journey. But that's going to do it for our headlines, as we are just going to continue rolling here with our part 2, where we're going to unveil our playoff brackets for the Challengers League playoffs. It's about that time once again. The NACL playoffs are starting today as this episode comes out in Hawk. We've done this every split so far. I actually don't know which one of us has done better. We haven't gone back and run the numbers on that, but we always do a little bracket
prediction. On a lot of things that we do, and somehow we've not done that. Yeah.
I feel like we do these brackets kind of like a lot of like it's a lot of like picking teams for content. It's March Madness.
Yeah,
you're kind of spitballing a little bit. Yeah. I have a feeling if you go back and look at all of our previous results, it's not going to be super pretty. But we have a chance to redeem ourselves here today.
We do. I know. We have each picked our brackets all the way through for the NACL playoffs. And for the first time ever, instead of each of us unveiling our entire playoff bracket and then talking about it and then switching, I, with my super awesome producer powers, have put on the most high-tech cover on our brackets. So we'll go round by round, and it'll be a lot of fun. So we'll kind of go, that'll give us some time to go match by match. Grapes, you're up first. We've got the round 1 matchups on the screen. This is what is guaranteed to happen starting on today when this episode releases. Thursday and Friday, we will have these matchups going on. FlyQuest AoE, Wildcard Fear, Maryville DSG, and Supernova Team Liquid Challengers. Grapes, who you got?
Okay, let's get started here. I went pretty chalk for this first round. I think all of the upper seeds for me ended up winning. As we mentioned in the start of the show, I feel like there's a pretty defined top 3. Mm-hmm. And, wild card over Fear. I feel like that could go either way, but I'm rooting for my collegiate guys a little bit here with St. Louis. So I have a feeling that they're going to perform pretty well, especially now that they're ramped up for playoffs. They finished 4th seed, which is way higher than the 10th that we originally had them in, or our community originally had them in our power rankings. So, wild card against Fear, I think, is the closest one of these. I think Supernova Team Liquid could be interesting, depending on how on form Team Liquid look. I think if I had to argue, I would probably say those are the 2 series I could see most going to 3 games, but I'm still gonna pick the favorites.
Yeah, I'm just gonna flip to mine because I have the exact same thing as you. Just to echo your sentiment, I mean, it's a clear top 3 that we have here in the NACL, and for as much as I want to believe in upsets, I do just think that Fly, Maryville, and Supernova should not be dropping to these teams. And then Wildcard versus Fear. It's funny that we both went for Wildcard. I do think like this one, there's no favorite. Like whoever wins this is going to win it. You know what I mean? I think it could be a 2-0 for either team. I think it could be a 2-1 for either team. It really just depends on who shows up on the day. I believe Fear 2-0'd Wildcard when they actually played. I think this is one of Fear's only 2-game series of the split, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think they had like 1-2-0 win and then 1-2-0 loss or something.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering correctly.
And I believe they 2-0'd Wildcard. This was when Wildcard had their like mid-season dip. They kind of started hot and ended okay, and they were bad in the middle. Yeah, by the way, Salty Runback community, we were getting cooked for our power ranking Wildcard 10th a little bit by Aaron and Myra on Twitter. So shame on you guys.
Hey, fair.
I totally believed in that team 100% of the way.
Yeah, I thought they were actually going to win the whole league.
Yeah.
They finished fourth.
We knew they would be good. No, shout out to Wildcard. They've been really good. I think that series against Fear is a must-watch. But as for the rest, it really just is like I could talk about how the merits that I think the other teams have, but in reality, it's just that FlyQuest, Maryville, and Supernova are probably better.
I know you were high on AoE coming into the season, but they have not looked super strong.
They have been pretty terrible.
Especially in the last couple of weeks. I think Zamudo's had a bit of a rougher split. Botlane hasn't been able to do too much, even though I think they're still pretty good players. I don't think that this is a very close matchup between them and FlyQuest, even though FlyQuest did lose their last series, or whatever to Supernova or anything. But I don't think AoE is necessarily the same caliber.
Yeah. AoE took the same number of games off Supernova that FlyQuest did.
Hey, Maryville
Yeah.
DSG. That's the one matchup we haven't really talked about yet. I think you mentioned on the NACL broadcast at the end of the show that you said that these are two of the hotter teams in the league.
DSG has won 3 in a row.
Do you think DSG has a chance here?
No. But we'll get into why later. But no, I do not think DSG has a chance. However, I did believe this when I said this on the NACL broadcast. This is two of the hottest teams in the NACL. DSG has won 3 in a row, and I actually think this team is a huge threat. Just not to Maryville, and we'll talk about why.
I think you could make an argument for any of the teams that we had lose making a run towards the like next round or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or making a run to like top 4, top 3, except maybe AoE.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry.
No flame to AoE or anything like that.
No,
Let's move on.
AoE has a really competitive game score. Unfortunately, that team is bad, and it pains me to say it. I'm being so blunt on this episode. Zamudo has been very inconsistent. Rosethorn Ona has been very inconsistent. Wixie and Breezy are trying, but I honestly don't think even they have been like good enough compared to what our expectations might have been. I mean, we were saying at the beginning of the season that they might be the best bot lane in the league, and they haven't been. So, yeah, that's
doesn't
kind
mean
of
bad, but just means haven't been the best.
That's where the situation is. I think AoE has a chance, but it just feels like they have more problems than the rest of the teams. But we'll see. Graves, I'll go to my losers round 1 first. So AoE Fear and DSG TL Challengers, which we both have. I am taking and this will also show you who I have, I guess, losing in the winners as well. But I am taking Fear to beat AoE for basically the reasons we just talked about. MVP lens, baby. And I'm taking DSG over Team Liquid. I have to believe in my Salt Street bet somewhere, Grapes.
Okay, you know what's crazy? I had the exact same outcome for this round as well. If we go back over.
Wait, you bet on DSG over TL?
I did. I think, actually, I don't remember. I might have had TL over DSG at the start of the season, but kind of crazy considering preseason
You were a
expectations.
TL truther. I've been a hater, yeah. I don't remember if you had them over DSG, though. You had them both high.
I think it was something. I might have had them over Supernova or something like that.
You had both of them
Either
over
way.
Supernova. I had Supernova number 2. I do remember that, yeah.
Either way, it's pretty crazy to see that this is like a lower bracket matchup, and none of us are surprised by it. At least given our expectations at the start of the season. Yeah. I think that it'll be close. I think the players on both teams are very talented. I think mid lane specifically will be an interesting watch, especially if Young is able to get his champions. And if that happens, DSG, as you said, they've been a bit hot lately. So I had the same thing. For that matchup, and I do think Team Liquid also have been ramping it up. I kind of just wanted to pick a team to kind of go on a run, and I picked Disguised.
That's so funny. Great. Are we picking the same bracket? Yeah, I actually think Disguised, I think they'll be fine in playoffs. I think they'll actually end up performing to sort of some of the expectations we might have had. To me, it feels like their issues are at this point smaller than Team Liquid's, and their players have individually been much more consistent as well, I would say. Still some issues for them. But yeah, and then Fear over AoE, I think we're in agreement. You can see the top of the bracket as well. We both took Maryville to beat Supernova.
Yeah. You want to go just into that?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no. Let's not yet.
Actually, I don't want to go into it because I want to reserve talking about Maryville
that's
for
going to spoil
reason.
the next round.
Yeah. So let's unveil what you have coming up here, Grapes.
Well, okay. So that's gonna give us. So let's talk about the upper bracket semis first as well right now, because you can see the teams that lost, which means you know the teams that won right here. As I had Supernova and Wildcard, I think you had the same thing, them in the lower bracket, which means that we had FlyQuest beating Wildcard, we had Maryville beating Supernova. The FlyQuest Wildcard one I actually think is pretty fun because I think wasn't Wildcard a team that took a game off of FlyQuest, or am I thinking of the other team? Am I thinking of a different team?
I do not remember actually.
I'm gonna double check.
I do not think Wildcard took a game off of FlyQuest, but I could be wrong. I believe it was
fact check.
It was Fear
no, they
for
did.
sure.
They did. Wildcard beat them.
Yeah. Okay.
On February 11th. It was a game where I don't remember this game really much at all, but
was that the game where Surdy went 0-11 on Rumble?
No, that was against Fear.
Oh, right. 3. Okay, that was that one.
I believe.
Oh, and they won! Oh, right.
And they won. Yep.
I forgot that they won that game. Oh,
so yeah,
no.
I think stylistically, I think they match up, especially if Wildcard are able to survive the early game against this team, because I think Wildcard's biggest strength has been like their team play and team fighting, and they can kind of match up with anyone, and so that's kind of why I would say 2-1.
Yeah.
For that series.
I think Wildcard has the ability to boom FlyQuest spot lane more so than most other teams in the league actually do. I just think FlyQuest is too good, right? And again, it's not shade to Wildcard really. I think it's just like that's how it is. As for Maryville Supernova, I'll talk about Supernova a little bit. I do unfortunately think even with their win over FlyQuest, this team is still number 3 to me. Reason being is that when I watch this team play, they feel like they play the game very normally, right? Which is in many ways a good thing. And they do it very well. Their fundamentals are very sound, but I just think they have less X factor than a team like Maryville in particular. That feels to me like they have been electrifying so far this split. So that is why I have Supernova going down to lower. But yeah. I
like this matchup a lot. I think it's fun. It's like Maryville versus like a good portion or a good chunk of UST.
Yeah.
Kenvi specifically in the jungle matchup, I'm super excited about. But I do have Maryville as well. I think, Kenvi's really solid, but I think Yuji also, as we said, we really think he's been playing well. Yeah. And so
I think Yuji will have a good stylistic matchup into Kenvi as well, as opposed to Shaden. Like, Shaden and Kenvi, I think, want to play the game similarly, where Yuji, I think, is a bit more of a jack of all trades and a generalist that might be able to neutralize Kenvi more by playing for lanes.
Also, I have a good feeling when we eventually see some of these brackets come out by other community members, I think a lot of people are going to be putting MU on fraud watch. I'm not going to lie. I feel like that could be like if some. I think they're like the, like every March Madness, there's like a 2 seed that everyone picks to lose in the second round.
Yeah,
I feel like MU might be that team for a lot of people because their expectations compared to where they originally were. Yeah, like they're the Purdue kind of. And so because of that, I kind of want to hedge that a little bit and ride their momentum into
so
the
interesting.
Finals.
That is so interesting to me.
Because if you're gonna pick one of the teams, I think it would be them. Compared to FlyQuest, maybe Supernova, but I don't think like compared to if you're gonna pick a fraudulent team between FlyQuest or Maryville, I think most people will pick Maryville. And if you're if you want to be different in any way and not just like predict the like 1 and 2 seeds in the finals, I think you would probably choose a team like MU to maybe drop out a little early.
I would not pick Maryville.
Really?
We'll talk about why.
Okay.
Okay. But we can move on to your. I'm
We
going
have the same-
to
we have the
reveal
same
your
thing,
next
right?
your next round here. Yeah.
Okay.
So far, our brackets are identical. This is where things change, Grapes. I'm going to reveal your next winner. So obviously you can see FlyQuest and Maryville in the winners finals here, and then going to top 4, you have Supernova and Wildcard.
Yep. I didn't realize I went so chalk. I'm confident. I think Fear is, I think, just like I think, a team like Maryville could be like a very easy team to like predict, to like, have the crazy prediction of like dropping out early. I think Fear is the team that everyone can kind of predict to go on that crazy run. And you know what? I think they have high highs. They beat Supernova last week or a couple weeks ago. But I don't know. I like what I saw out of SN, and I think that they could continue to go here a little bit. I think specifically Faisal versus Phillip is a pretty Supernova favored matchup, although I do think Phillips had a pretty solid split. It's pretty even in terms of the players, except for maybe like the mid jungle, where you could argue Shochi Kenvi is a little stronger. So that's where I
I mean, I don't think that's a hot
Supernova
take.
in
I think
series.
Shochi Kenvi is stronger. Yeah, I'll flip over to my. Oh, actually, talk about Wildcard DSG first, because we'll talk about that one first, and then I'll.
I had two different brackets in my head, and one of them involved DSG going all the way to the finals. But I thought it would be too like easy, too Cinderella-y, like the perfect outcome, the sports movie outcome. Toast is on his chair going crazy over the Miracle Run or anything like that. So I picked Wildcard instead to be different, I guess. I think DSG, as you said, they've been hot recently. They ended the year 4-5 after being 1-5 or something. So that's pretty good. I don't know. I like the matchup, I think. Specifically in mid lane, where I think Darkwing can handle Young even on some of his more, assassin-like champions and things like that. And I also think Aaron and Dox are the better bot lane, at least from what we've seen this split, which is kind of crazy to say.
No, it's true. You're right.
Had a good split. So that's where I have Wildcard.
Yeah, that's very valid. I think Wildcard versus DSG is sneakily going to be one of the most competitive series of the split. And I got DSG taking it, baby. Let's go. Disguise to the top 4. So just to talk about Supernova versus Fear real quick, I kind of hit the nail on the head for you. It comes down to mid jungle. I think Supernova's is just better. I think this could be a competitive series. I just think Lens and Daption are going to have their hands too full against Array and Diamond. Yeah, sorry. Array and Diamond to like get past Supernova. And again, Supernova clear top 3. But Disguise Wildcard. Okay, this comes down to a couple things. I would agree. I think Wildcard has had the better bot lane. Shout out Aaron and Doxa. They have vastly exceeded my expectations. Good job. As for what Disguise has going for them, though, I think Tenacity is starting to play like the Tenacity that we wanted. Dude absolutely fisted the shit out of Zamudo in the last day of regular season. Like, that Gragas game in game 1 was filthy. Absolutely filthy. Okay? Tenacity is starting to look like that guy again, and I think that's huge for this team. They're also starting to play like a team that actually understands how to play League of Legends. It's very like rudimentary and very stock standard, but they've started doing it, which is good because this was a huge thing that was holding them back early in the split. I think the series will be decided by Perry versus Winnie. I actually think Winnie has had a better split, but I took Disguised. I don't know. They're hot. It really boils down to that. I think this is a very close series, and you could go either
The win streak, I think, is the biggest argument against. Because Wildcard, they've kind of not stumbled into the end of the regular season because they have
been
good wins
wildly
recently.
inconsistent. Wildly inconsistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like DSG, inconsistent in a way, but they also have been on a win streak recently, which I think gives them a little bit of momentum.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see why you picked DSG. I definitely thought about it for a long, long time, and I eventually said on Wildcard.
Yeah.
So I have the top 4 teams in the top 4. That's super creative. Thanks, Graves. Do you wanna go to this next one here?
Yeah. Because we ain't done with the spice. DSG to top 3, baby. Let's fucking go. And you can also see I got FlyQuest challengers there to meet them. Because I'm just gonna spoil the whole thing right now. I think Maryville's not on fraud watch because I think they are the best team in the LCS Challengers League Grapes. I think Maryville is the team to beat. They have the best mid jungle and they have the best bot lane. Niles has been fine.
Damn.
No, okay, that's dude. It keeps sounding like I'm like.
Bro hops in backpack. Did you like that? That's crazy.
He's the your Uncle Sam. No, no, Niles has been good.
Okay, now we're just throwing strays at everyone right now.
Niles has been like a top laner in the league. I just mean, like, UG Spyrax, I think can beat anybody. And Maryville, when they're on, they're unbeatable. Like, I look at the first game that they won against FlyQuest, for example. They did so by playing like their game and achieving the win conditions. And they almost beat FlyQuest in 2 more games doing the exact same thing, right? And FlyQuest is a damn good team, but I think this Maryville team really is something special. Also, I think they have had a more impressive growth trajectory than FlyQuest to me. I think FlyQuest has been a little bit more carried by some of the individual performances as opposed to the team play, and I wonder if that'll hinder them in the playoffs. So I have Maryville beating them in winners finals, and I also have DSG beating Supernova completely for the memes. They're hot. I like the stock.
Stay hot. Yeah, exactly.
I like the stock.
Yeah, so you don't have any explanation for that matchup? Because I know not to
no, I don't
spoil anything, but I did do something like basically exactly the same as you, where I had FlyQuest losing and I had Supernova also losing in this round.
We're so not creative. Oh my god!
I know. We literally picked the exact same bracket except for one difference, and that was like a pretty whatever difference right there.
And then we're gonna have FlyQuest beating them, aren't we?
Hey, think about it. I think I'm starting to realize we have the exact same fucking bracket.
Okay, I'm just gonna reveal yours entire. Oh my god!
I was trying to be different by not picking FlyQuest, and now I've realized that
Grapes, we talk about League too much with each other. We think the same thing too much. Oh no.
Wildcard versus Supernova, I think could go either way. I think, but I also was doing my bracket.
Grapes just likes the stock too.
I was doing my bracket. And I was like, I picked the higher seed in every single matchup so far. I have to do something different. Let's say wildcard win.
I love how we both sacrifice Supernova at the altar for content. We literally both.
I'm
so sorry,
honestly,
Supernova. Love you guys. Shochi, I know you watch the show. It's nothing personal. The fact that
we did the exact same thing. That's hilarious.
Oh no.
Maryville vs FlyQuest, I think, is an interesting one as well. The early game is where Maryville win a lot of their games in the season.
Yeah, they're
and
the best early game team in the league.
And, I think they're maybe better at the early game than FlyQuest, specifically through their bottom lane.
Yes.
And I think that might be all that it takes. I think there's not even a mismatch, because the biggest mismatch that most teams have with FlyQuest is probably mid lane, because Quad has been so insane, but I think Spyrax is able to match pretty well. I hope we get another best of 5, if not 2, of those 2 teams.
Oh
but yeah, this sucks. We're terrible content people. We're terrible content people, Hawk.
I already explained my logic here with Maryville FlyQuest. The last thing I really have to say, and then I don't really have much else, is we have really teed ourselves up to get added when Supernova inevitably makes top 3 like they should. Like, why have we done this to ourselves?
It's one series. It's just one series that we both picked the other one for.
I'm going to get flamed harder because DSG is going to lose in the first 2 rounds. I swear to God. Like, they're going to lose to Team Liquid.
Hey, it is one of these teams, one of Fear, DSG, TL, or Wildcard is going to be, or AoE, or two of them if you include AoE. I don't know why we're shooing in AoE, just because they kind of have looked bad recently. Like, they could, I think AoE also.
I mean, AoE still has a chance, yeah.
2 of those teams are going to be out at the end of this week.
Yep.
I think that's kind of crazy.
Yep.
Because they're all pretty good. And remember, after Supernova in the top 3, all of these teams were separated. I think they were separated by maybe one game between them. They were all either 4-5 or 3-6. I'm pretty sure. So they're all like pretty equal, and it's just gonna be like one best of three on Saturday. Those two best of threes on Saturday are gonna mean a lot in terms of like who has a chance of going on a run and who doesn't.
Yeah, just so everyone knows, everyone from Wildcard who was in fourth, or no, Fear was in fourth, or no, wait, whoever was in fourth.
Took fourth.
Either Wildcard or Fear. From them to DSG, everyone was 4-5, and then AOE is 3-6. And AOE actually had a better game score than like half of them. So it's gonna be a banger. I mean, honestly, I think AOE's biggest misfortune is running into Fear, to be honest. But yeah, I think this is gonna be very entertaining. I'm excited. I do think we have a very obvious top three that we have both for content sacrificed one of them at the altar.
And it's also like the lowest seeded one. Like we didn't.
I know
like,
none of us had the balls to do FlyQuest or Maryville. But yeah, I think this will be very competitive. I think a big question is really going to be, can anyone actually beat these teams? Like, if I'm being honest, I think if FlyQuest, Maryville, and Supernova all 2-0 their matchups on Thursday and Friday, then I think we'll be pretty justified with how we have picked mostly chalk. You know what I mean? And then it's really going to be about the bottom table teams. Like,
hey, the funny thing is we both pick very similar games. But I don't know about you. I don't feel confident about like any of them.
No,
I don't feel confident
don't
in my bracket
either.
at all. Like sometimes I'll fill in a playoff bracket. And okay, this like makes sense. Right now I don't know at all because as you mentioned, like those bottom 5 teams are like so close to each other, and it really comes down to who has the better day. And it's hard to predict that.
The thing I'll leave us on is I think matchups to watch: Wildcard Fear in the first round on Thursday. Any of the first 4 lower bracket games, honestly, even the Supernova one, I think very interesting. Maryville Supernova, that's another one, Grapes, that neither of us picked Supernova over Maryville. Easily could go the other way. That'll be a really good one. Obviously, and then like the top of the table ones like FlyQuest, Maryville, that kind of stuff. So, those are definitely your must-watch games, I would say. Wildcard, DSG, or whoever's in that game. Yeah, any of those first lower bracket matchups. So, yeah, Grapes. I mean, it's going to be a great NACL playoffs. Like I said, we're eliminating 16 teams from North America this weekend.
Is it really 4 teams that get knocked out? I think it's only. I'm looking at it now.
I guess it depends on the games that we play. Are we playing A5 and A6 or L3? Oh, you're right.
You have to, I guess.
You're right. Okay, so we're eliminating 14 teams.
10 teams. What?
12 qualifier teams and 2 challenger, right?
Well, the 4 of them have already gotten eliminated, so it's 8 qualifiers. And then 2
I'm so bad at math. We're eliminating 10 teams this weekend.
Hey, we're still double digits.
Yeah,
so that's
we're eliminating 10 teams this weekend. It's gonna be a lot of fun, y'all. So you're not gonna want to miss it.
Yeah, I think, make sure to savor these moments, guys, because in 2 weeks the season's gonna be over. Well, there's gonna be promotion, but in 2 weeks, we're going to have the grand finals of the promotion tournament. That's it. And then we're going to have 2 months of no developmental League of Legends until the summer split starts again. That's when we start focusing on CLOL, actually. So maybe make sure to stay tuned to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, CLOL is coming up, y'all, in April, I think, or even late March. So don't miss CLOL. We have CLOL Central going on our channel. Do we have CLOL? Did we reach out to Levitate?
We do. I'm not sure if they're available. We'll check in.
Okay,
we're gonna try to get as many playoff matchups on our streams as possible. Make sure we get as much coverage of the regional playoffs before the bracket is unveiled.
Absolutely.
So make sure you stay tuned. Stay tuned to our Twitter. That's probably where we'll be updating you.
Yeah, we may or may not have CLO Central this week, but if we don't this week, we definitely will as the playoffs continue. When we start like next week, Grapes sent me like 7 matchups that look good. Also, make sure you tune into Salty Runback as well as all the other community streams this weekend for NACL Qualifiers. We've got a lot of great matchups. I think this will be the most exciting week of the qualifiers that we've had all year. These quarterfinal matchups in particular are going to be a bloodbath. Ole Miss against Lotus will be on Salty Runback on Sunday.
Or Wang versus Lotus.
Yeah, or Wang. Shout out Wang. Shout out Wang. If it's Wang, it's less exciting. But no offense, but it's true. But Ole Miss may be against Lotus on Sunday on Salty Runback. That's basically battle for the promotion tournament. Grapes, I know you'll be casting that one maybe I might be as well, but I have family coming into town, so we'll see. And then on Saturday, we have the Tier 3 Tonight match of the week, which is going to be Reluminate versus Team Fish Taco. So you're not going to want to miss that. Those are both at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Follow us on social media. Follow me and Grapes at Hawkcasts, at Speedy Grapes, at Salty Runback Pod for the both of us. And if you think that Supernova is not going to bomb out to a team with like 5 less wins than them, you can take what we said with a grain of salt. I've been Hawk. That's been Grapes. This episode maybe got a little loosey-goosey at the end, but it was a lot of fun, and I hope you'll have a great night.